10 minutes లో 8+2 అన్నారు కదా.
అవును సార్.
అంటే ఆటోమేటిక్గా కట్ అయిపోతుంది సార్ అది.
అవును సార్, 8 minutesకి అయిపోతుంది అది. 2 minutes మనం మాట్లాడాలి.
అదే
బాబు ఆయన రెడీ సార్, కానీ ఆన్ చేసే వాళ్ళు వేరే ఉంటారు సార్.
అవునా? నరేష్ అన్న అతను చేశాడు సార్, అతను ఫోన్ చేద్దాం మీ దగ్గర. చేస్తాం ఉండండి. అంటే అతనే స్క్రీన్ షేర్ చేయటం అట్లా ఉండదా సార్?
సార్ దగ్గర ఏం లేదు, ఇంకా వాళ్ళ దగ్గర ఏం లేదు. సార్ సార్ అదే కదా సార్, మేనేజ్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ నెగ్లెక్టెడ్ క్రానిక్ టెండోఎక్లిస్ రప్చర్స్ విత్ వివై అడ్వాన్స్మెంట్ అండ్ ఎఫ్హెచ్ఎల్.
VVI-plasty, comparative study between VVI-plasty and FHL.
Yes sir. Last loనేమో safe percutaneous repair of Achilles tendon.
Anతే sir, percutaneous, safe percutaneous.
Yes sir, it has come out.
Okay.
Sir, I play the video.
Yes Babu, please.
Who is speaking?
I am Dr. Chandrasekhar, panelist.
Sir, I am Atul Sharma on technical team.
Okay. I am Dr. Kodendapani. I am also online.
Okay sir.
Ready? The candidate also has come, Mr. Guneshekar, Dr. Guneshekar.
Yes sir, I am present sir.
Okay sir, I play the video.
Okay.
If you say to tell us to start, we'll start.
Sir, start.
Okay.
Sir.
Not able to see the screen.
A very good morning, sir. Myself, Dr. D. Guneshekar from Narayana Medical College, Nellore. Today my OSSCon abstract ID is OASP293 and my conference registration number was OASP263, sir. Today I'm going to present about a comparative study on the management of neglected chronic tendo-Achilles ruptures with the VY advancement and flexor has its longest augmentation with the interference screw, sir.
Please go ahead.
Coming to introduction, Achilles tendon, despite being the strongest tendon in the body, is vulnerable to spontaneous rupture due to overload and local pathology, sir. The rupture occurs in relatively hypovascular area 2 to 6 centimeters above the tendo-Achilles insertion onto the calcaneum. The repair of chronic cases requires augmentation with the turn-down plasty or use of tendon transfer, tendon graft or synthetic materials. Flexor has strongest tendon transfer is commonly used in neglected chronic tendo-Achilles ruptures for augmentation. Achieving good structural healing is the aim of the treatment, sir. Coming to aims and objectives, my aim is to compare the functional outcome of the management of neglected chronic tendo-Achilles ruptures augmented with flexor Hans longest by interference screw technique and by VY advancement plasty in terms of clinical and radiological outcomes, patients' complaints and complications. The method, sir. In the study, a total of 30 patients with chronic neglected tendo-Achilles ruptures who underwent surgeries between August 2018 to August 2019 were included, sir. Mean age of the patients were 55 years. All the patients were subjected to clinical examination, ultrasonic evaluation, and prepared for the tendon transfer. Patients with a gap of greater than 6 centimeters were chosen for this study. Out of the 30 patients, 14 patients underwent VY advancement, of which 8 were males and 6 were females, and 16 patients underwent FHL augmentation with interference screw. Among them, 6 were males and 10 were females. Post-operative follow-up was done at the 1 month, 3rd month, and 6 months. Coming to the procedures, VY advancement, the patient is positioned prone under the tourniquet hemostasis. The incision is made distally at the rupture level, medial to the Achilles tendon in order to avoid the potential swollen nerve injury. Once the rupture gap is confirmed, the incision is extended proximally along the posterior midline of the calf. The ruptured tendon ends are freshened and heavy braided non-observable suture is then sutured into the ends of the ruptured tendon. An inverted Y incision is made within the myotendinous portion of the gastrosoleus achelis mechanism. The suture is then used to apply longitudinal traction to the proximal tendon stump while gently teasing the muscle fibers longitudinally, allowing the myotendinous junction to slide distally. The stump sutures are tied together and the weave incision is repaired using a non-absorbable suture, creating an inverted Y repair cell. Coming to the FHL transfer, the patient is positioned into the prone. The Achilles tendon is exposed with the slightly medial direction of the incision. Tendon ends are debrided and freshened. The FHL tendon is isolated on the medial side of the foot and retrieved through the Achilles tendon incision. The FHL, the flexor hallucis muscle belly is weaved through the Achilles tendon and then passed into the transcalcaneal tunnel to exit out of the middle of the heel, anchored over a gauze with the ankle in 5 to 10 degrees of plantar flexion, and the slab is applied postoperatively. The results were the common cause of ruptures were spontaneous associated with some casual activity followed by the blunt trauma. The common casual activity that led to the rupture of was tumbling in the 60% of the patients. Results were evaluated by the American Orthopedic Foot and Ankle Society hand-foot scores. The AOFAS hand-foot scores improved from 58.4 preoperatively to 91.1 at final follow-up in VY advancement and from 49.2 to 92.3 in the flexor hallucis longus augmentation groups. 96% of these patients were able to stand on tiptoes for 30 seconds at the end of 6 months follow-up. In flexor hallucis group, 5 patients had superficial infections and delayed healing. No re-ruptures have been reported. No patients developed a haematodeformity in the flexor hallucis augmentation group. Coming to the comparative study, among 30 patients, 9 patients provided excellent results in VI advancement and 12 patients provided excellent results. 3 patients of VI advancement gave good results and 3 patients for flexor hallucis longus tendon transfers. Conclusion, both VI advancement and flexor hallucis augmentation with the interference screw are effective methods for the management of chronic tender Achilles ruptures with a gap of more than 6 centimeters. In VI advancement, no sacrificing of the ankle plantar flexors are used. The patient should be warned that the wasting of the calf is not likely to be recovered fully. In flexor hallucis longus augmentation, the flexor hallucis is the strongest plantar flexure. Its axis of contractile force more closely reproduces that of the Achilles tendon. Therefore, the plantar flexion strength is completely reinforced, which is almost always compromised with facial advancement alone. Its anatomical proximity avoids the neurovascular bundle. With regards to the vascularization of the Achilles tendon, the flexor hallucis muscle belly extends distally into the avascular zone of Achilles tendon and allows the recruitment of increased blood supply to the repaired side. A potential concern about the flexor hallucis tendon transfer is the loss of active interphalangeal joint flexion of the hallux, but majority of the patients were unaware of the functional weakness of their hallux. Nevertheless, satisfaction and function in the both groups of the patients remained high. My references. And thank you, sir.
You said the mean age of the patient is 55 years. How many
50 years,
of them are 55 years and was there no younger age group patients?
Actually, in our study, there are no younger patients, sir.
No study. For all of them you did FHL or all of them you did
No, sir.
VY-plasty?
In the 30 patients, in 14 patients, we did VY-plasty, sir. In 16 patients, we did FHL augmentation, sir.
FHL augmentation on what basis you have done? What made you opt for FHL?
Sir, it's a synergistic action, sir, and it's a longer plane of belly, sir.
We must, for FHL, the stump must not be there, tendo-Achilles stump. For that, you said you have ultrasound examination. Did you not do an MRI? Do you have an MRI facility at your hospital?
Yes, sir, there, sir, but we didn't do any MRI for all the cases, sir.
For none of these 30 patients, 55.
We
These
did for,
patients you did MRI.
we did for 2 to 3 patients, that's it, sir.
There is a surgical strategy in treatment of tendon Achilles rupture. The basic investigation is MRI followed by ultrasound examination.
Okay,
What
sir.
are the criteria to decide upon the type of surgery?
Sir, based on the gap between the
Sorry to interrupt. First of all, you did not define what you mean by chronicity, number one. Number two is you must have told us the time of injury and the time for surgery.
Okay.
Time of injury to time for surgery. What is the maximum period you allow, and when do you do surgery, and when do you say it as chronic or neglected?
Patient presented to the OPD after the 2 to 3 weeks after the presentation of the first symptoms, sir.
There is a preoperative protocol.
Sir.
Preoperative protocol for tendon Achilles repair, neglected repair, and it is a complex surgery. It's just not done like that. VY plasty, why did you choose VY? What are the other modes of repair?
Sir, tendonoplasty, sir. And,
Tendonoplasty.
acute cases, end-to-end suturing, sir. Subcutaneous repairing, sir. Using modified Kesslers and
Did you think of any other tendon transfer?
sir, plantaris tendon,
No, plantaris is very thin, Gadana.
sir.
Did you use peroneus brevis?
No, sir. Peroneus action of plane of action is different in the lateral aspects. Sir.
Can you use FHL in younger patients?
No, sir, because in younger patients the activity is more, sir. The use of hallux in walking is most prominent, sir.
Okay, what are the outcome measures? How do you say what is the post-operative protocol, rehabilitation protocol? You immobilize or you don't immobilize?
We don't
Immediately
immobilize, sir.
operate, immediately
Post-operatively, we applied Ebony slab, sir, in foot in
Slab.
20 degrees of plantar flexion for 2 weeks, sir, followed by the same in plantar flexion orthosis for 2 more weeks, sir. Later on, we allowed for
posterior slab splint, or is it entire
anterior slab splint, sir. Ebony,
posterior slab splint? Posterior slab splint is not there. Posteriorly you don't support.
yes, sir.
Is it ebony slash splint all through the rehabilitation, or you do it in stages? When will you
For the first 2 weeks, we used Ebony splint, sir. Followed by the next 2 weeks, we used Piloni plantar flexion orthosis, sir.
Sir,
Sir, carry on.
yeah, time up, sir. We will call the second person.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Functional is ready.
Jawhar, Dr. Jawhar.
Yes, sir, I'm here, sir.
Jawahar Tirupurga. You there? You can
Yes, sir,
start.
I'm here, sir.
Functional outcome following repair of chronic Achilles tendon rupture. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Dr. Jawahar, second year postgraduate student in orthopedics from Government Mohan Kumaramangalam Medical College, Salem. And my topic is on analyzing the functional outcome following repair of chronic tendon Achilles rupture. And I would like to thank my chief, Professor Dr. Karigalan, my assistant professor Dr. Senthil Kumar, Dr. Syed Nasser, and Dr. Shiv Kumar for giving me this opportunity. And before going to the study proper, I would like to quote some previous articles. Repair of chronic tendon Achilles rupture, Bosworth technique versus peroneus brevis transfer technique. This have concluded that both techniques have near similar functional outcome, whereas Bosworth technique had limitation in the form of requirement of distal stump of at least 2 cm. And to overcome this limitation, another study has been conducted, repair of chronic Achilles tendon rupture by modified Bosworth technique. And this have shown no distal stump is required for the repair, and rupture that have a large gap of more than 5 to 6 cm can be repaired by this technique. And another technique is TUFOS technique, and studies have shown significantly good functional outcome following this technique. And Campbell has defined chronic rupture has ranged from those diagnosed and treated more than 48 hours after injury to those diagnosed and treated up to 2 months after injury. In all other studies that have quoted, They have used either of the one scoring system only, that is modified rep scoring or AOFAS ankle hindfoot scoring, whereas we have analyzed the functional outcome using both of the scores. This study is aimed at analyzing the functional outcome following repair of chronic Achilles tendon rupture operated either by modified Bosworth technique or Tufos technique. The functional outcome was analyzed based on both subjective and objective criteria. Objective criteria being ankle range of motion and neurological status of the foot, whereas subjective analysis is done using modified rep scoring and ankle AOFAS ankle hindfoot scoring system. And this is retrospective analysis of 10 patients with chronic TA rupture admitted and treated in GMKMCH Salem from the period of Jan 2018 to October 2019. 6 were operated by modified Bosworth technique and 4 by Tufos technique. And exclusion criteria being patient with associated severe comorbidities such as uncontrolled diabetes, patient with poor condition, and patient with open Achilles tendon rupture were all excluded from the study. MRI has been used for imaging purpose to analyze whether the lesion is partial or complete. And coming to the surgical step, modified Bosworth technique, a posterior longitudinal incision is made. Sural nerve and short saphenous vein are taken care of during the exposure. The contents of the tendon are exposed. Since this is a watershed area, the contents of the tendon are retracted and this needs to be freshened. Normal repair of tendon, that is end-to-end suturing, is always unsuccessful in these cases, and hence it should be augmented with tendon transfer or using synthetic materials. Bosworth technique, also known as gastrosoleus turn down flap technique, is where a medial raphe is raised from the gastrosoleus muscle. Modified technique is that the calcaneal drill hole is made and the tendon strip is passed through it, rather than it is passed through the distal stem as in conventional Bosworth technique. And then the strip of the tendon is sutured to the proximal stem and skin is closed. In Tufos technique, similarly, the tendon cut ends are exposed and freshened. A separate incision is made at the insertional site of peroneus brevis tendon. It is cut and mobilized. Calcaneal drill hole is made and peroneus brevis tendon is passed through it, and then it is sutured to the proximal stem and to the peroneus brevis muscle itself, and then the skin is closed. Post-operatively, a strict protocol is followed and earlier rehabilitation exercise were given for all the patients. And this case shows modified Bosworth technique. See, there is a significant gap between the cut-ends of the tendon, which has been successfully repaired by modified Bosworth technique. And this is a 2-year follow-up of the patient showing a very good ankle range of motion. And another case is by Tufos technique, and this is pre-op image, and this is 15th-month follow-up with good healed scar and very good range of motion in ankle. Complication in our study were scar hypertrophy, superficial infection, and deep infection requiring surgical intervention, that is flap cover, and luckily no patient had reported re-rupture. And male to female ratio in our study is 2:3. And regarding etiology, more number of patients, that is 4 were due to steroid injection, and next to it was trauma, and other least causes are chronic oral steroid intake, neglected open rupture, and degenerative causes. Results were tabulated, objective criteria being ankle average dorsiflexion and average plantar flexion. Both were increased following both the procedures, and no cases were reported with nerve paresthesia. Regarding wound complications, 2 were because of modified Bosworth technique and 1 was there following Tufos technique. This is the modified rep scoring, 35 being the maximum score, and this is AOFAS ankle hindfoot scoring, 100 being the maximum score. Pain is given more weightage, that is 40 points. Results of cases operated by modified Bosworth technique is tabulated. Mean and standard deviation for all cases has been calculated, and that was also tabulated. 1 patient gave excellent result, 3 gave good result, 1 poor, and 1 fair result were obtained by this technique. And results for cases operated by Tufos technique, 1 patient gave excellent and 2 gave good and 1 gave fair report. And similarly, mean and standard deviation were tabulated. Statistical analysis, the average plantar flexion before and after both the surgeries was listed using paired t-test, and there was a significant increase in values in both techniques. And the significance of difference between pre-op and post-op AOFAS scores for both techniques were calculated using paired sample t-test. The values of cases operated using both were found to be significantly increased post-operatively. And Modified rep scoring of the surgeries done using both procedures were compared using independent sample t-test, and there was no significant difference between the two, and all tests were done using p-value of 0.005. The average dorsiflexion and plantar flexion was found to be increased significantly in surgeries done using Teufer's technique, but however there was no significant difference in post and pre-op AOFA scoring obtained after two technique. And this is the gross report. 2 patients gave excellent, 5 gave good, 2 gave fair, and 1 gave poor result. Conclusion being, modified Boswell technique is a simple and safe procedure and doesn't require a distal stump of at least 2 cm as in conventional Boswell technique, and is useful in case of large defects. It requires a wide exposure, but no separate incision is required other than exposing the Achilles tendon, and the anatomy of adjacent compartments of leg are not disturbed. Whereas Teufer technique is a complex technique but with minimal exposure of the field. It involves exposure of 2 compartments of the leg, and as peroneus brevis is used for augmentation, eversion may be compromised, and this is also useful in treating large defects. Difference in final outcome of both the procedure is statistically negligible. Therefore, both the techniques have near similar functional outcome and clinical outcome and equal range of complications. So, either of the methods can be selected by the surgeon with respect to his expertness as well as patient profile. These are the references taken for our presentation, and thank you for your patience and opportunity given. I thank you one and all. Have a great day.
Yeah, Dr. Johar.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
How do you identify the peroneus brevis muscle and tendon?
Sir, excuse me. Sir, we have identified the base of the fifth metatarsal, and then we have made a separate incision on the place, and then we have cut the tendon from that insertional site, and we have through the same approach we have done for exposing the Achilles tendon on the lateral aspect. We have dissected, and then we have taken the strip of the tendon which has been detached from the attachment insertional site, sir.
No. When you have exposed the lateral compartment,
Yes, sir.
the tendon is not there. The tendon insertion is at the fifth metacarpal.
Yeah, yes, sir.
So how do you identify at the ankle level?
Sir, by push and by pulling the tendon at the insertional site,
There are
we
two
have
tendons there. There are
what,
two
sir?
tendons there. There are two tendons there. One is peroneus longus, another is peroneus brevis. You pull both of them and check.
Yes, sir. At the insertional site, we have pulled and checked, sir.
Okay. Sir, any questions, sir?
Yes, sir. What is the pre-op? You said that you can do surgeon. It is left to the choice of surgeon, and both the procedures can be chosen, either of them.
Yes,
What
sir.
is the criteria to choose Teufer's or modified Bosworth?
Sir,
Another question. That is
yes,
one
sir.
question. First question. Second
Yes,
question is, what do you do MRI for the?
Yes, sir. For all patients, we have done MRI, sir.
What do you do in MRI? What all you do for, and what do you base your surgical decision on MRI or not?
Sir, yes, sir. We have checked the distance between the rupture in MRI, sir. And then we have, along with that, we have done clinical evaluation on also, and then we have planned the surgery, sir.
How does MRI help?
Sir, it has shown the distance of distance between the cut ends of the tendon, and the nature of the chronicity also, and then if there are any other degenerative reaction like calcification at the sites or some other changes also, we can able to analyze using MRI.
Don't you look at the stumps? How much of the stump is left onto the bone and how much of the stump?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does it make a difference in selecting the choice of surgical treatment?
Yes, sir. But in our technique, in case of any large defect, both of the techniques can be used, sir. In case of using Bosworth technique alone means we have to think of the distal stump, but in as we are doing drill hole in the calcaneum and we are putting the stump inside the tendon inside it and making the suture, we need not worry about the stump distance at the distal end, sir.
My point is, why should we disturb the virgin bone? Calcaneum is not involved. Calcaneum is disturbed by opting
sir.
for peroneus brevis.
Yes, sir.
So, in all your cases, simple Bosworth could have been done.
Yes, sir.
Why? What is the rationale of choosing Teufer's method?
Sir, just to compare the outcome, we have chosen it, sir. How the Teufer's method gives outcome when compared to Bosworth technique.
Sir? Chandrasekhar, sir.
Sir,
Okay, sir. There, chat box lo kuda no questions, sir. Kya adutara? Sir? Chandrasekhar, sir. Hello?
We will go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next candidate, sir.
Yeah, Muhammad Asad. Babu, play the next video.
Good morning. So my paper is about management of congenital Talipes equina virus by Joshi's external stabilization system. So introduction, CTV is a common congenital deformity occurring in variable degrees of severity, and certain number of the foot are well improved by serial quantity correction technique. But in idiopathic CTV, as the soft tissues are abnormal and bony changes usually occur secondary to the soft tissue variations, vigorous manipulations might not be physiological, particularly in neglected and rigid types. Dr. B.B. Joshi in 1988 developed a highly versatile external fixator system with great potential, which is effective in management of CTV. It is a semi-invasive technique of controlled differential distraction, which is more physiological comparing to Professor Elizarov's technique. So this discussion is done to review the modern thinking and address the deformity correction of clubfoot by using just fixation. Aims and objective of this study is to evaluate the efficacy of controlled differential distraction as a method of management in recurrent, resistant, and neglected CTV, and to critically evaluate the outcomes based on the clinical and functional criteria, and also to evaluate various merits and demerits of controlled differential distraction technique. So this study comprises management of 30 feet in 21 patients with recurrent, resistant, and neglected CTV using just fixation between June 2019 to December 2020. The study was conducted in Mahatma Gandhi Memorial Government Hospital, Trichy. This is a randomized controlled prospective study. Inclusion criteria includes patients diagnosed as neglected CTV, patients who are resistant for conservative management for CTV, patients who are resistant for soft tissue release procedures, syndromic CTVs. The exclusion criteria include patients who are medically unfit for surgery and also patients whose parents refused for surgical procedure. So this was the age distribution included in the study. The male patients ranged from 10 months to 15 years and female patients ranged from 11 months to 14 years. Around 42% of the patients were between age group of 0 to 3 years. 33% of the patients were between 3.1 to 6 years. 14% of the patients were between 6 to 12 years, and around 10% of the patients was more than 12 years. So 71% of the females were male, 71% of the population were males, and 28% of the population were females. 57% of the patients had unilateral involvement, 42% of the patients had bilateral involvement. 13 patients with 20 feet were categorized as neglected type, 8 patients with 10 feet were categorized as recurrent or relapsed type. Previous procedures done in relapsed and recurrent patients. Out of 30 feeds, 10 had underwent previous procedures. 6 underwent posterior middle soft tissue release. 2 underwent manipulation and serial casting technique, and 2 underwent both the procedures. So this was some of the complications introduced. That is, 40% of the patients had a flexion contraction of the toes. 26% of the patients had a superficial pin tract infection, and around 13% of the patients had temporary edema and loosening pains. 3% of the patients had skin necrosis and rocker bottom feet, which were all treatable. So coming to the operative procedure, initially 2 parallel wires were passed, transfixing the tibia from lateral to medial direction 2.5 centimeter below the tibial tuberosity, perpendicular to the long axis. Distance between 2 wires should be equaling the distance of the middle segment of the Z rod. Next, 2 parallel wires were passed, transfixing the tuber of the calcaneum from medial to lateral side, perpendicular to the long axis of the calcaneum. The space between these 2 wires should be matching the space between the holes in the blocks of the distractor to be used. The axial wire is passed into the calcaneum from posterior to anterior direction. The point of entry should be just distal to the Achilles tendon insertion in the longitudinal axis of the calcaneum. Next, one transfixing wire would be passed from the fifth to first metatarsal, engaging at the level of the neck. Next, two distinct wires, one from medial and other from lateral aspect, would be introduced parallel to the initial wire. These two wires should engage 2 or 3 metatarsals at the level of proximal shaft on their respective sides. Next, the tibial wires should be attached to the middle segment of the Z rod with the help of link joints on either sides. Next, two small L rods would be connected to the metatarsal wires on either side. Then, two large L rods would be connected to the two transfixing calcaneal wires on either sides of the heel. These rods are connected with each other using a connecting rod behind the foot to which the axial calcaneal wire would be fixed. A pair of suitably sized distractors would be attached to the calcaneal and metatarsal wires on both the sides of the foot, keeping the distractor knobs inferiorly. Posterior limb of the Z rod would be connected to the L rods of the calcaneum by a distractor on both the sides, attaching near the transfixing pins. Next, the anterior limb of the Z rod should be connected by two connecting rods to the small L rods anterior to the attachment of the metatarsal wires on both sides of the foot. On 14th postoperative day, distraction was started medially at a range of 0.25 mm every 6th hourly, laterally 0.25 mm every 12th hourly. So initially the calcaneal metatarsal distraction was started. Next, the tibiocalcaneal distraction was started. Both at a ratio of medial to lateral at a ratio 2:1. The distraction period was 6 weeks and followed by a static period of 6 weeks. The removal of assembly was done under GA and an above knee plaster was applied for 2 weeks. When pin tracks healed, a below knee cast was applied, full weight bearing was allowed, and the cast was removed after 4 weeks. So results were formulated according to Lehman and our functional rating system, which includes these 10 entities. So in this, anything with score above 85 would be considered as an excellent result. Anything above 70 to 84 would be considered as a good result. Anything more than 60 up to 69 would be considered as a fair result. Anything below 60 would be considered as a poor result. So in our study, about 30 feet, 6 patients had excellent results, scoring above 85. 19 patients showed good results, scoring 70 to 84, and 5 patients had fair results, showing score 60 to 69. So among the types of clubfoot, among 20 neglected clubfoot, 2 cases had excellent results, 14 cases had good results, and 4 cases showed fair results. Of the 10 relapsed and recurrent clubfoot cases, 4 cases had excellent results, 5 cases showed good results, and 1 case showed fair result. So these were the outcome distribution among the types of clubfoot. Among the relapsed or recurrent types, 40% had excellent results, 50% had good results, and 10% of the patients had fair results. Among neglected types, 10% of the patients had excellent results, 70% of the patients had good results, 20% of the patients had fair results. So this was the preoperative film of a patient with a neglected CTV, followed by application of JEX fixation and controlled differential distraction. The deformity was corrected. So to conclude, the age of the patient included in the study ranged from 10 months to 15 years, averaging 5 years. 15 were males and 6 were females. There were 12 unilateral and 9 bilateral cases. Carroll's clinical criteria helps to achieve complete deformity assessment, and prognosis of the patient can be determined by using its score. Callocalcane index helps in radiological assessment both preoperatively and postoperatively. So these are the advantages of JEX fixation. There is no operative scars, foot length and alignment can be maintained. A soft, supple, and a plantigrade feet can be attained. Considerable deformity correction is possible through this controlled differential distraction. The size of the foot can be maintained. JEX also makes it possible to manage severely deformed clubfoot in non-invasive manner without bony resections and shortening of the feet. This technique permits simultaneous correction of all deformity components without waiting for the completion of skeletal growth. Thus, it is concluded that JEX application is an excellent method of management in neglected, resistant, and recurrent CTV patients. Thank you.
What was the mean age of the patients? Age of the patients. Hello?
Dr. Asad,
Sir,
yeah, a question for you from Dr.
yes, sir.
Nagarpandi, sir.
What was the mean age of the patients? How many patients you said you operated?
30 feet, sir. 30 feet.
How many of them? What is the mean age?
Mean age was 6 years, sir. 6 years.
Most of them are neglected, no?
Yes, sir. 20 cases were neglected and attained.
Did you, for any of them, do a talectomy?
No, talectomy was not done, sir.
Why?
Talectomy was not done, sir. In 10 cases, they had undergone posteromedial soft tissue release procedure, sir. And since it was not correctable, we underwent chest fixation, sir.
Oh, did you compare this? Why not a regular Elizaro for this?
Sir, regular Elizaro we did not do because of the compliance with the patient, sir.
Oh.
Elizaro is also a good technique, sir. But since chest fixation has got more compliance when compared to Elizaro, we decided to go with chest fixation, sir.
So what are the common complications you have encountered with chest fixator?
The common fracture of the toes, sir.
And with the advent of this Ponseti technique,
Yes,
nowadays the role of chest fixator has come down.
Okay, sir.
And then in an other than you said 30 feet, 10 were post-operatively post PMSR was done. And the rest of
Yes.
the cases, did you do initial soft tissue release before doing chest, or straight away you went for a chest fixator?
In patients who did not undergo posteromedial soft tissue release, we initially underwent a post tissue medial release, then we forwarded with chest fixation, sir.
Okay. So how many months chest fixator was on the foot?
Chest fixation, initially it was applied for 6 weeks with a distraction, sir, followed by 6 weeks without a distraction, sir. So total of 12 weeks it was applied, sir.
Okay. You kept the same time as the distraction time. The
Yes,
holding
sir.
time is equal to that of the distraction time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. After that?
After that, it was removed under general anesthesia and an above knee plaster was applied, sir, since till the pin site healed. After the pin site healed, after 2 weeks, we went with below knee slab, sir, for 4 weeks. And it was removed after 4 weeks and patient was able to fully weight bear, sir.
Okay. How do you know whether, do you do any radiological imaging studies to know whether the correction has consistently come or not?
Yes, sir. We talocalcaneal index and talo first metatarsal angle was calculated, sir. And it was below 40 and talo first metatarsal angle was 15 degrees correct.
So when did you allow the patient to weight bear? Once you have put the cast, do you allow the patient to do the weight bearing on the cast?
After removing the AK slab, after 2 weeks, after pin site healed, with the below knee cast, patient was able to weight bear, sir.
And after that, do you advise any night sprints or any?
No, sir. After we did not advise any night sprints, sir. Patient was able to walk.
You remove the cast and make him walk.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. We'll go to the next case, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Venkata Narasimha Rao. Venkata Narasimha Rao. Venkata Narasimha Rao. Sir.
You had come and you are the first person to come.
Hello.
You are there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Narasimha. I am from NRI Medical College. Today I am going to discuss about the comparison of efficacy of extracorporeal shock wave therapy versus corticosteroid injections in plantar fasciitis. Plantar fasciitis is usually the most common cause of the heel pain, and we account for the 11 to 15% of all the foot symptoms. It has bimodal distribution, affecting both athletic and sedentary patients. Usually characterized by the pain and tenderness at the calcaneal origin of the plantar fascia upon weight bearing after prolonged periods of rest, and lessen with increasing level of activity during the day. Plantar fasciitis can be painful and disabling and can be worsened over time. Treatment includes a conservative treatment, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and physical therapy. And corticosteroid injections and extracorporeal shock wave therapy are the other modalities of the treatment. The patient does not respond to the physical therapy after at least 6 months. And extracorporeal shock wave therapy gains more popularity in the corticosteroid injection, as the corticosteroid injection are responsible for are mainly known for the plantar fascia ruptures. Shock waves in medicine are usually pulsed acoustic waves characterized by the short duration of time, and it has very high pressure amplitude and very low tensile wave components. Shock waves are usually generated outside the human body in water and transmitted widely over a large skin area onto the target area, not onto the target region, where the acoustic energy is concentrated to a focal area of 2 to 8 millimeters in diameter. Aim of the study was to evaluate the efficacy of extracorporeal shock wave therapy versus local corticosteroid injections on pain intensity and patient satisfaction in the treatment of chronic plantar fasciitis. Total 40 patients with symptoms were divided into two groups, that is Group A and Group B. And diabetic patients were taken into Group A, which received extracorporeal shock wave therapy. And non-diabetic patients were taken into Group B, which received corticosteroid injections. It is a randomized retrospective study. The mean age of 30 to 60 years, studied from June 2019 to February 2020 in NRI Medical College. Inclusion criteria includes tenderness to pressure at the origin of the plantar fascia on the middle to peripheral of the calcaneus, complaining heel pain in the morning after sitting for a long time, and increased foot pain with extended walking or standing for more than 15 minutes, with the pain intensity of greater than or equal to 3 on visual analog scale of 1 to 10, and failed conservative and physical therapy. Exclusion criteria includes previous history of local surgeries, fractures of the foot bone, any systemic inflammatory diseases, or patients who who had received corticosteroid injections for plantar fasciitis within previous 6 months, or physical therapy within previous 3 months. In this group, they received shockwave therapy using radial extracorporeal shockwave therapy, 2,500 shockwaves, shockwave pulses fired with the repetition frequency of 2 pulses per second. Energy level or intensity was set at tolerable level by the patients. All the subjects received 5 sessions of the extracorporeal shock wave therapy at 3-day interval for 5 to 7 minutes per second without local anesthetic drugs. And Group B received 40 mg methylprednisolone with 1 ml of 1% lidocaine was injected under sterile condition with 22 gauze needle into the most painful tender point. And in this Group B, patients were recommended to apply for cold therapy twice a day for 10 minutes, for 10 minutes, and rest for 24 to 48 hours, and limited weight bearing or the injected area. Coming to result, the visual analog scale before the treatment of corticosteroid injections was 5 to 9, and after the treatment of injections for it is 0 to 4, and whereas the visual analog scale before the treatment of extracorporeal shock wave therapy was 5 to 9, and after the treatment it was 0 to 3. Coming to natural history of all plantar fasciitis is almost plantar fasciitis is almost self-limited. It usually resolves within 16 to 18 months, and sometimes resolution can take resolution of plantar fasciitis usually take longer, which can lead to the patient dissatisfaction and patient dissatisfaction. The effectiveness of extracorporeal shock wave therapy and corticosteroid injections are compared in patients with the chronic plantar fasciitis, resulted in the considerable improvement of pain in the morning and during the day. And we observed there is mean improvement in pain in the morning and during the day following extracorporeal shock wave therapy and corticosteroid injections at the end of the 8 weeks. Pain, there is improvement in pain during the morning following extracorporeal shock wave therapy was And coming to corticosteroid injections are provided better relief of plantar fasciitis symptoms at 1 month, but not at 6 months when compared to the extracorporeal shock wave therapy. The risk associated with corticosteroid injections include skin and fat atrophy, infections, and plantar fascia ruptures. In a retrospective study, corticosteroid injections were associated with the 10% of incidence of plantar fascia rupture. Assessment was done at a baseline, and at 4 weeks and 8 weeks after treatment with 5 sessions of 3 to 6 day intervals of extracorporeal therapy. And in case of single steroid injection, after a patient is evaluated after 15 days after this 15 days after the injections. Corticosteroid injection usually requires periods of rest after administration, while extracorporeal shock therapy has benefits of no immobilization and return to the work. Although pain occurs during the therapy session in both the treatment, the pain during injection is greater than the pain in the radial extracorporeal shock therapy. Extracorporeal shock therapy relatively is a safe procedure. Would be considered before any surgical treatment and may be preferable to try before local steroid injections. Both the radial extracorporeal shock therapy and local corticosteroid injections treatments improved pain after 2 months of the treatment. Although the intergroup difference were not significant statistically, patients were more satisfied with extracorporeal shock wave therapy, and pain relief is long lasting in extracorporeal shock wave therapy than the corticosteroid injection. The shock wave therapy seems the alternative, safe alternative management for the chronic plantar fasciitis. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Narasimha Rao,
Sir, yes, sir.
yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Now I can hear you, sir.
Oh, good. Only one injection was given, methylprednisolone, or you have given 2-3 injections?
Sir, we have given 2-3 injections at the interval of 1 week, sir.
1-2 weeks.
1 to 2 weeks we have given injections, sir.
Okay. Short
Still the patient has, sir.
Shockwave therapy, is it only single sitting, five sessions you said?
Yes, sir.
Gap
Sir,
of
we have
every
given-
day you have done?
Sir?
Every day you have done that?
No, sir. We have given the week of 1 interval gap, sir.
Ante, one session today you have given. When you have given
Yes,
the next
sir.
session?
Now, another week, sir. Next week on
Another
the same day.
So weekly once.
Yeah, yes, sir. On 3 sessions, for 5 sessions we have given, sir, for 1 week interval gap, sir.
Okay. How
Where
it
do you
works?
Yes, sir, sorry, Sir, kanivanni. Sir, go ahead.
How
Hello?
it works?
Sir?
How shockwave therapy works?
Sir, usually works by 3 phenomena, sir. One is electrohydraulic mechanism, one is electromagnetic, and one is piezoelectric mechanism, sir. Like electrohydraulic mechanism usually meant for long wave therapy, sir. Whereas electromagnetic and piezoelectric for low to medium energy waves, sir. In this,
Okay. Sir,
Yeah. What are the guidelines for plantar fasciitis? You said shock therapy as well as corticosteroids are giving excellent results. When do you give them?
yes, sir. Sir, after the failure of the physical therapy, sir, we'll advise the patient for
conservative treatment.
physiotherapy, sir.
Did you,
Sir?
in your cases, exhaust all conservative means?
Yes,
Did you
sir. We have
try-
exhausted
try
all
using
conservative means. Then we went for.
Try use orthotics in your patients? Orthotics?
Sir?
Orthotics in your patient?
Yeah, we have tried all those, sir. After that, patient has no symptomatic group, then we went for the shockwave therapy, sir.
Straight away?
After giving physiotherapy, we are advising for the chapels, and when we went for the physiotherapy, corticosteroid injections and shockwave therapy, sir.
What are the complications with the shockwave therapy?
Sir, complications include local infiltration, sir.
Local?
And local tissue damage, sir, and hemorrhagic needles will be hemorrhagic needles.
Do you give
and,
anesthesia? Do you give anesthesia while doing shockwave therapy?
Sir, if the anesthetic were less than 0.38 mm square, we do not need. For low dose to medium shockwave energy, we do not need anesthesia, sir. For high dose energy, we need anesthesia of single.
No. Shockwave therapy always produces pain. That is almost in 60%.
Yes, sir. Sharp pain will be represented pain.
So you don't give anesthesia? How do you give? Do you do an ultrasound targeting, or you just do it like
Yes,
that?
sir. We have done ultrasound targeting with 1% lidocaine injection, sir.
So what were the complications? What were the relief?
Sir?
What was the relief of the patient? Say if you give shock therapy 100 patients, how many of them had good relief? What is the end criteria?
Sir, we taken visual analog scale therapy, sir, and pain analog scale, sir, and shockwave therapy. Patients had good results, sir, compared to that of corticosteroid injections, sir. In 5 to 9 patients of male, 5 to 9 patients of good therapy, sir, and compared to that of the
Okay, what is
corticosteroid
the complication? What is the complication of corticosteroid injection?
Sir, we'll go with local tissue damage, sir.
What tissue damage?
Sir?
What tissue damage? Local tissue damage means what? You are giving it for plantar fasciitis. Where do you give?
Sir, we'll ask the patient to sit on prone position, sir, with ankle in neutral position, and then go for the most tender point, sir, against the head, against the head, sir, and
What
we'll go for
happens if
short.
the injection goes into the heel pad?
Sir,
What happens if the injection goes to the heel pad?
it produces cavitations.
Okay, sir, we'll go ahead with the other case.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Babu.
Next.
Thank you, sir.
Next is safe percutaneous, sir.
Sir, start the video, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna.
Sai
Wrong reading
Kishan,
to
sir.
Scientific Committee of OSISCON 2020. Thank you for accepting my paper for oral presentation. I'm going to present a topic called Safe Percutaneous Repair on Achilles Tendon Rupture. My name is Dr. Sai Kishan, under guidance of Dr. S.K. Biswas, Department of Orthopedics, DPU, Pune. Introduction. The treatment modalities for Achilles tendon rupture may vary from conservative to different surgical options. Main concerns of conservative treatment are the complications of long-term immobilization and re-rupture rate, to be minimized by advances in post-operative rehabilitation programs and functional bracing. On the contrary, the main concerns of the open repair are wound complications should be minimized by recent advances in minimally invasive techniques. Percutaneous repair of the acute tendo-Achilles rupture avoids possible complications of open as well as conservative treatment. This paper presents a series of patients with acute tendon rupture treated with percutaneous repair carried. The purpose of this study is to evaluate the clinical and functional results of the percutaneous repair of the acute Achilles tendon rupture and efficacy of this technique in sural protection. Patients and methods. The study was approved by Ethical Committee of DPU University Pune. A total of 22 patients with complete rupture of the Achilles tendon were treated in Dr. D.Y. Patil Hospital and Medical College, Pune using the presented technique. All present patients signed an informative consent form. There were 16 men and 6 women, the mean age of 34.7 years. The causes of injury were sports activity, twist injury, falling downstairs, and during daily activities. The rupture was diagnosed at the site of rupture, a palpable tendon gap, as you can see in the picture, positive Thompson test, positive Matley's test, and loss of plantar flexion in the affected ankle and unable to walk on toes on the affected side. The diagnosis was confirmed by radiological evaluation for all patients. MRI and USG are used for screening. All patients had a complete rupture of Achilles tendon rupture with a gap of less than 3 centimeters, located 3 to 6 centimeters proximal to the calculum incision. The inclusion criteria were complete rupture if Achilles tendon of not more than 1 month duration with intact skin and intact sensation of the affected limb. Exclusion criteria: incomplete rupture of the Achilles tendon, chronic rupture exceeding 1 month duration, sensory impairment of the affected limb, bone avulsion of the calcaneum tuberosity, history of recent local corticosteroid injection, and re-rupture of the Achilles tendon. The percutaneous tendon repair was done with a mean of 8.5 days. The mean follow-up was 26 months. All patients underwent surgery under spinal anesthesia without tourniquet. Patients were placed in prone position with free ankle and foot for easy mobilization. After detecting the site of rupture, skin incision markings were marked along the posterior aspect of the Achilles tendon. Leg and foot were prepared and draped. Operator technique. Materials required: needles 16 gauge, short, long stainless steel needles, sutures Ethibond 50 and Ethelon 30. Ethibond can be easily passed to the 16 gauge needle. Operative technique. For the posterior aspect of the tendon, 4 to 5 centimeters above the proximal end of the tendon, 16 gauge needle is passed from middle to lateral end through the tendon and Ethibond is passed with 16 gauge needle. Then two 16 gauge needles are passed obliquely inferior to superior through the tendon as shown in the figure, and Ethibond is passed through the needles. This similar technique is followed again till the proximal end of the tendon is held firmly with Ethibond. Then this similar technique is followed in the distal part of the ruptured tendon. Schematic diagrams of the procedure. As you can see in the image, the needles are passed from middle to lateral end, then the Ethibond is passed through it. These are schematic diagrams of the procedure. Keeping the ankle in plantar flexion till you get the approximation of the rupture and tendons. Then a drill bit of 2.7 mm is passed through the calcaneum medial to lateral, and 16 gauge needle is passed through the drill hole, and radial end of the point is passed through the needle, lateral to medially, so that the free ends of the one are placed medially. The free ends are tied and knot is buried under the skin. If necessary, apply skin sutures. Hold the limb in plantar flexion and apply POP cast after aseptic dressing of the wound. POP should be molded along the course of the tender Achilles. These are the pictures of the procedure. Hold the limb plantar flexion, apply POP cast. Post-operative care and follow-up. Immobilization was done for 2 weeks in anterior below knee in the plantar flexion for 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, gradual protected weight bearing, gradual increase in ankle range of motion, and cause strengthening stretching exercises were initiated. Routine clinical follow-up was performed at 2, 4, and 6 weeks. After 12 weeks, patient is asked to resume full and normal daily activities. MRI was done at 3 months for all patients, and clinical follow-up was completed at 6, 9, 12, 18, and 24 months. Evaluation. American Orthopedic Foot and Ankle Study Score was used for functional evaluation. The ankle healing foot scale consists of 9 items scored together for a total of 100 points, which were distributed over 3 categories: pain for 40 points, functions 50 points, and alignment 10 points. Thompson test, double heel test, and the single heel test are also recorded. Patients returned to work and complications were recorded. Results. Average time of percutaneous repair of Achilles tendon rupture was 20 minutes. Period of hospitalization was 1 to 2 days. The mean follow-up was 26 months. Functional outcomes were recorded at 18 months post-operative visit for all patients, 22 patients. The time interval from repair to return to work was 5 to 12 weeks with a mean time of 7.4 weeks. The time interval from repair to return to sports was 16 to 28 weeks with a mean time of 20 weeks. The variable anatomical course of sural nerve makes it vulnerable to injury during the percutaneous suturing of the recent Achilles tendon rupture. The sural nerve during its course crosses over the lateral body of the Achilles tendon at variable distances from tendon insertion. Distally, the sural nerve passes lateral to the Achilles tendon insertion. To overcome this possibility of sural nerve injury, the lateral half of the Achilles tendon should be spared from percutaneous sutures. In our patients, no tendon ruptures with adequate tendon healing at 3 months were observed. Deep vein thrombosis doesn't occur in our series. This is due to early mobilization in anterior below knee slab or cast and accelerated rehabilitation programs. Presented percutaneous technique is easy and safe with a low rate of complications. This technique preserves blood supply of the tendon because paratendon is not stripped, prevents infection and early healing of Achilles tendon. Thus, this technique is very much helpful in diabetic patients. This technique avoids the possible complications of conservative and open management with neither re-rupture nor sural nerve injury, as the percutaneous sutures are not placed in this procedure. Thank you.
Okay, Kishan, what was the maximum gap you had in your series?
So the maximum gap was like 4 centimeters, sir, but we included all the patients with the gap of less than 3 centimeters. If the gap is more than 3 centimeters, and if you are not able to approximate the proximal fragment, proximal segment and the distal segment, then I converted the procedure into the open surgery, sir.
Suppose if it is more than 4 centimeters, you convert it into open.
If I tried for a percutaneous repair, but if I'm not able to approximate the 2 ends, then I tried for a open. Then I convert the surgeries into open, sir.
Okay. What were the complications you had?
Sir, in this there are no complications because there is no infection, and there is no infection because of the percutaneous sutures. It's not open surgery. So I did not find any complications in this percutaneous technique, sir.
In your picture, intraoperative picture, you have shown Vicryl, blue Vicryl.
So no, sir. Some cases I have tried with Vicryl also, but it is better to use with Ethilone. Ethibond, sir. Ethibond is superior to the superior material.
What was the longest follow-up in this case?
So the longest follow-up was like 16 months, sir. 16 months follow the functional outcome and everything. Longest follow 16 months, sir.
Okay. The tendo-Achilles strength was equal to that of the opposite side. By the end
Sir,
of
yes, sir, it's almost equal by the end of 5-6 months, sir, because the patient was able to do his routine activities and as well as normal jogging and moderate physical activities, by the end of 5-6 months.
How do you know that the anatomical continuity and the functional outcome has come?
Sir, after the 12 weeks, we have again the USG and MRI was done for most of the patients, sir, who are
clinically,
affordable.
to see the functional outcome,
Yes, sir.
MRI is required.
So for the anatomical continuity, we have done MRI sir, and USG. For functional outcome, that is, he was able to do his routine activities and the plantar flexion and dorsiflexion was proper without any pain on any tenderness.
Try to do a heel raise.
Yes, sir.
That you must do. Was it good in all
Yes, sir, it was.
What happened to the girth of the gastrocnemius in your cases? Got restored?
Sir, it's
wasting of the cost. Sorry, asking.
Sir,
Wasting of the cost.
Sir, all the cases we are selected with acute rupture, sir, because that's why there is no wasting of the gastrocnemius, sir. Because, and one more thing, and the rehabilitation within 12 weeks, I've started all the rehabilitation processes after 12 weeks. So there was only mild decrease in the girth of the gastrocnemius muscle, sir. Not significant wasting of the muscle.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
very much.
Sai Kishan.
Yes, sir.
Sir, please conclude the session, sir.
Yeah. We had a nice
Thank you very much, sir.
4 of them. All of them are good presentation, but lagging in documentation.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's all. Thank you, sir.
So we thank the organizers for giving this opportunity, and we will conclude this session. Thank you.